This is also a time of change for my family.
King Charles was only moments away from entering one of the most sensitive Privy Council meetings of his reign when a familiar figure appeared in the palace corridor. The man had been formally forbidden from approaching royal business, yet there he stood outside the meeting chamber carrying a sealed leather case. Charles stopped walking, stared directly at him, and made a decision so sudden that senior councillors were left waiting behind closed doors. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Buckingham Palace prepared for a controlled morning, but Edmund Harrow's appearance shattered it. The Privy Council, senior advisors who formally approve certain decisions made by the sovereign, had gathered to discuss royal appointments, household access, and the future division of duties between Charles and William. William understood the danger. Whoever controlled access could influence what reached the king, and Harrow had no lawful reason to be there. Harrow had once served as Camilla's household advisor, helping manage introductions and confidential schedules. That relationship ended after a documented internal account accused him of entering restricted offices and requesting timetables without permission. His clearance was gone. His return therefore struck Charles as more than disobedience. Someone inside the palace had reopened a door the monarch had ordered closed. Charles raised one hand and stopped the procession behind him. He ordered the council chamber doors to remain shut, then turned to Sir Clive Alderton. "No one enters until I know who cleared that man," he said. Sir Clive moved toward security while councillors heard chairs shifting beyond the doors. The king then cancelled the meeting before it began. No discussion, no compromise. A protection officer asked Harrow to surrender the leather case, but the former aide tightened his grip. He insisted its contents were intended for Camilla alone. Charles noticed the insignia of the Queen's household pressed into the case, and felt suspicion cut through his anger. The Queen consort had not warned him, yet Harrow could not have crossed controlled passages without help from her office. The temporary badge offered the first answer. A visitor record issued that morning carried an authorization linked to a senior member of Camilla's staff. Charles studied it without speaking, while William watched his father's expression harden. Then Harrow looked beyond them toward a doorway. The king followed his gaze. Camilla stood there, pale and silent. She did not step forward. She did not deny knowing the man. The meeting had been cancelled, but the deeper crisis began when Charles realized the forbidden aide was not the only person in that corridor hiding the truth. To the councillors waiting inside the chamber, Edmund Harrow was merely an unauthorized visitor. To Camilla, he was a former confidant who had managed delicate problems before they reached the king. To Charles, he represented something far more dangerous. A private channel operating inside the royal household without the sovereign's knowledge. 3 people stood within a few yards of one another, each carrying a different version of the truth, and only one controlled the palace doors. Harrow had once coordinated private correspondence, arranged sensitive introductions, and solved problems before they became public scandals. During the early years of the reign, he moved freely between Buckingham Palace and Clarence House, the London residence used by Charles and Camilla. That access gave him more than influence. It gave him knowledge of private schedules, staff rivalries, family disagreements, and the quiet fears hidden behind formal palace statements. His return, therefore, carried a threat no ordinary visitor could create. Camilla felt that threat when her husband asked whether she had invited him. She opened her mouth, hesitated, and looked toward the corridor. That pause wounded Charles more deeply than an immediate confession might have done. He wanted to respond as her husband and trust her without question. Yet he also carried the duty of the sovereign, the reigning monarch responsible for protecting royal business. The unauthorized badge and sealed case demanded evidence, not affection. Charles led her into a small withdrawing room, a private space used for conversations, away from waiting officials. He placed Harrow's visitor badge on the table between them and quietly asked, How did he know where I would be? Camilla reached toward it, then pulled her hand back. She admitted during that private conversation that the former aide had contacted her office 2 days earlier. He claimed to possess information capable of damaging a senior royal advisor, but she insisted she had never approved a palace meeting. The answer brought no relief. A security record showed that Harrow entered through the Queen's private reception route, avoiding the main desk and 2 identity checks. Someone had not merely welcomed him, someone had carefully guided him around the barriers created after his ban. Camilla denied giving that order, but Charles could hear fear beneath her words. The question was no longer whether she trusted her former confidant. It was whether somebody had learned to use her authority without her permission. William arrived after the cancellation and found his father standing alone beside a window. The prince, the king's eldest son and heir to the throne, waited until Charles finally said, "Someone used her name to get close to the council." William offered no easy reassurance. He watched as the leather case was moved into a secure office and opened under documented supervision. Staff found no money and no personal correspondence. They found a copied seating plan from a previous confidential royal meeting. That copied plan pointed backwards, to a private reception 6 weeks earlier, when Harrow's removal from royal service had become personal. Edmund Harrow had not been banned because of a single careless mistake. His fall began during a private Windsor Castle reception, where an overheard conversation, an unlocked antechamber, and one missing folder shattered the trust that had protected him for years. What looked like a minor breach became the point of no return. By the end of that evening, William wanted him investigated, Charles wanted him removed, and Camilla was privately pleading for the palace to avoid humiliation. 6 weeks earlier, Windsor had welcomed senior household officials and charitable trustees, the people responsible for overseeing organizations connected to royal causes. Harrow attended as Camilla's personal guest, even though his name no longer appeared on the formal staff list. That detail troubled William. The former advisor could still shape the Queen's thinking without answering to the King's private secretary, the senior official responsible for managing the sovereign's duties and confidential work. Influence without accountability had already become dangerous. William entered a private antechamber during the reception and stopped without speaking. Harrow stood beside an open red dispatch box, one of the locked cases used to carry sensitive papers to the monarch. Inside rested a draft list of future royal appointments, proposed choices for important roles made in the king's name. The aide quickly lowered the lid. Neither man moved for several seconds. Harrow finally claimed he had followed a footman through the wrong door. William did not believe him. A folded page was protruding from his jacket pocket, and the future king recognized the same official markings printed on the papers inside the box. He calmly asked the former advisor to remove it. Harrow refused, insisting that the page concerned Camilla and had been given to him privately. That answer made the breach even darker. Camilla confronted her confidant after the guests had left. She felt shaken, rather than furious, because she understood what his actions could suggest. Someone close to her was trying to influence decisions made under royal authority. Harrow repeated that he had become lost, but she had heard that excuse before. Her fear deepened when he refused to say who had asked him to examine the appointments. Charles felt humiliated when his son delivered a documented account of the discovery. The king removed his glasses, rubbed his eyes, and asked whether personal loyalty had begun to outrank constitutional discipline, the rules and duties that prevent private wishes from controlling the crown. William answered carefully, but his meaning was clear. Harrow could no longer remain near royal business. A recorded security interview destroyed the former aide's story. Harrow correctly described the location of the antechamber, despite claiming he had entered it by accident. His visitor record also exposed 3 earlier palace entries that Camilla said she had never authorized. Security officers then recovered the folded page and identified it as a copy of the draft appointments list. He refused to name the person who wanted it. Charles issued a written order permanently revoking Harrow's access to every royal residence. Yet 6 weeks later, someone created a fresh badge and guided him toward the Privy Council chamber. The old breach explained why he was forbidden, but only a direct confrontation could reveal why he had dared to return. William did not raise his voice when he entered the room. That made the confrontation more powerful. He closed the door, placed the inventory page beside Diana's locket, and looked directly at Camilla. Catherine remained near Charlotte in the adjoining chamber, while Charles and Anne stood between two histories that had never fully reconciled. For the Prince of Wales, this was not about public reputation. It was about his daughter being wounded by a memory the palace had mishandled. Camilla sat beside the velvet-covered table, as Charles remained near the fireplace, and Anne guarded the closed door. No aides had been permitted inside. William refused the chair offered to him. As Prince of Wales, the title traditionally given to the heir expected to become the next monarch, he understood the danger of public scandal. But tonight, he stood there as a father. William explained exactly why Charlotte had recognized the necklace. Months earlier, his daughter had asked what Diana wore whenever she felt nervous. He had shown her a family photograph and described the word courage engraved into the metal. That private conversation had turned the locket into something Charlotte connected with the grandmother she had never met. Camilla held his gaze as he asked whether she had known. "Had I known, it would never have left the case," she answered. The Queen removed any suggestion that she considered the piece her own, yet sincerity could not erase Charlotte's tears or soften the anger building inside William. Charles tried to contain the confrontation by calling the incident a cataloging failure. The king meant a mistake in the official record used to identify and track royal possessions. William pushed back immediately. Reducing Diana's belongings to numbers, he said, was precisely how the family had allowed her personal history to be mishandled again. Camilla suddenly remembered something missing from her jewelry briefing. Beneath the description had been a narrow strip of torn adhesive. She had assumed an outdated valuation. The estimated financial worth of an object had been covered. Anne stepped closer and studied the briefing. The Princess Royal realized that the adhesive marked the exact place where the ownership warning had been removed. Charles asked who had authorized the change. Anne named the senior household official and supported her revelation with a documented instruction issued months earlier. That record ordered staff to keep jewelry with uncertain ownership out of circulation, meaning it could neither be displayed nor worn until verified. Someone had knowingly broken an existing safeguard. William placed Diana's photograph beside the locket. Camilla studied it, then made an offer nobody expected. She would return the necklace to Charlotte herself, but only if the girl agreed to see her. That apology might ease one wound. Yet first, Charles had to decide whether palace procedure mattered more than his son's moral claim. The king did not summon Edmund Harrow to a formal office, or place a row of officials between them. He confronted him in the narrow corridor where the breach had occurred. Camilla stood several feet away. William watched from beside the chamber doors, and two protection officers guarded the exits. Charles asked one question: "Who sent you?" Harrow's answer did not calm the crisis. It turned a security violation into a confrontation between husband, wife, and crown. Charles ordered the corridor cleared of junior staff, while the councillors remained inside the locked chamber. The Privy Council, a formal body of senior advisors who approve certain decisions made by the sovereign, could hear movement outside, but received no explanation. The silence protected the confrontation from gossip, yet it also increased the pressure. Harrow could no longer hide behind palace procedure or Camilla's name. Harrow claimed the leather case contained urgent material concerning proposed changes to the Queen's household, the team responsible for supporting her official and personal duties. He insisted the information could not safely pass through ordinary palace channels because senior advisors were attempting to weaken Camilla's position. Charles heard those words as an attack on his authority. He moved closer and asked why a banned former aide believed he could approach a constitutional meeting involving official matters of state. Camilla flinched when Harrow declared that Her Majesty's interests required protection. The title referred to the Queen in her official royal role, but she refused to let him use it as a shield. "Do not speak for me," Camilla said sharply. Her anger was clear, but so was her fear. Charles noticed both. He wanted to believe his wife had been used, yet Harrow knew too much about that morning's confidential agenda. Charles extended one hand toward the leather case. Harrow hesitated and tightened his grip while a protection officer shifted forward. The king did not raise his voice or look away. Seconds passed before the former aide finally surrendered it. That small movement changed the balance in the corridor. Harrow had arrived carrying influence, but now he stood without the object that had given him confidence. Harrow then admitted, during the recorded security confrontation, that Marianne Voss had issued his temporary badge. As Camilla's assistant private secretary, an official who helped manage correspondence, schedules, and access, Voss had the authority to approve limited entry. He insisted Marianne acted after receiving a verbal message that appeared to come directly from the Queen. Camilla denied sending any instruction. Charles then asked whether she had spoken with Voss that morning. She hesitated before admitting they had discussed the council agenda over breakfast. William quietly closed the side door and told Harrow that using private knowledge to force entry was not loyalty, it was coercion. Charles opened the case under documented supervision. Inside were annotated staff charts and a proposal placing several of Camilla's loyal aides beyond the oversight of his central household. Harrow had reached the corridor, but those papers revealed the real battle concerned who held power behind the palace walls. Royal power is rarely exercised through raised voices. It moves through access lists, private secretaries, sealed agendas, and the simple authority to decide who enters a room. By canceling the meeting, Charles reminded the palace that every constitutional discussion depended on his confidence. Yet the staff charts inside Harrow's case exposed a competing structure, one that could have allowed Camilla's inner circle to act with unusual independence from the sovereign's own office. The discovery carried constitutional weight because a Privy Council meeting could approve decisions made in the monarch's name. Every person controlling its doors, documents, and schedules therefore had to be trusted completely. Camilla held authority over her personal household, meaning the staff who supported her royal duties and private arrangements. She could shape that team, but she could not use it to influence state business, council proceedings, or decisions reserved for the king. Charles felt sadness beneath his anger. Harrow's proposal suggested that Camilla believed she needed a separate network to defend her position from the palace's central advisors. The thought cut deeply. Had his wife begun to see his own officials as enemies? Had she started to view William, their future king, as a threat rather than family? The papers offered no comforting answer. William urged decisive action, although he chose every word carefully. He told his father that protecting a marriage could never mean allowing uncertainty to surround the crown. Charles heard the warning, but refused to act from wounded pride. The king knew one reckless decision could punish Camilla for Harrow's actions while leaving the real security failure untouched. He needed proof, not suspicion. Charles carried the proposal into his private office and read it twice. He circled 3 staff names with a fountain pen, then stopped when he found Camilla's handwritten initials beside one recommendation. The notation did not prove she had approved the full plan, but it confirmed she had seen part of it. He placed the pen down and remained silent. The proposal demanded that Marianne Voss report directly to Camilla on staffing changes involving shared royal residences. That arrangement would bypass the master of the household, the senior official who oversees the daily operation of occupied palaces. Voss would gain freedom to place loyal staff near both royal households without seeking approval from Charles's central office. Such control could shape who heard private conversations and who reached the monarch. A documented examination of Harrow's phone uncovered something darker. His calendar contained a private audience scheduled immediately after the cancelled meeting. The entry carried only 3 words: approval after council. Harrow had expected someone to accept his proposal once the councillors departed, but the record did not identify who. Charles suspended Voss's security privileges and ordered a formal review of every access authorization issued by Camilla's office during the previous 2 months. Marianne did not protest when informed. She asked only whether the king had heard the voice message that brought Harrow back. The palace could suspend a badge in seconds, but that message threatened to pull Camilla herself into the center of the fallout. That evening, Charles entered Camilla's sitting room without a private secretary, protection officer, or prepared statement. For the first time since the corridor sighting, they faced each other without the machinery of monarchy surrounding them. Camilla did not deny maintaining contact with Edmund Harrow after his dismissal. Charles did not hide how deeply that secrecy wounded him. Yet the forged recording had changed the question. They were no longer deciding whether trust had been broken, but whether enough honesty remained to rebuild it. Charles began with the evidence. A documented technical examination had found digital cuts throughout the voice message, proving that separate phrases from Camilla's recorded dictation had been rearranged into a false command. Security records also showed that Marianne Voss received it from an account designed to imitate the Queen's private communications channel. Voss failed to confirm the message before issuing Harrow's badge, turning one deception into a palace crisis. Camilla listened without defending Marianne or blaming the system. She admitted that she had exchanged private calls with Harrow after his ban because she feared becoming isolated as William gained greater influence. The prince, as heir to the throne, was assuming more responsibility for the monarchy's future direction. Camilla worried his advisors would weaken her household and slowly remove the people she trusted. She knew her husband had forbidden contact, but convinced herself those conversations were personal rather than official. Charles rejected that distinction. He told her that secrecy, not ambition, had placed the crown at risk. The king no longer believed she had deliberately sent Harrow toward the council chamber, yet his disappointment remained sharp. Her hidden calls had given the former aide private fears he could exploit. They had also made the forged instruction believable to Voss. Camilla held out her personal phone and invited Charles to read every exchange. He did not take it. Instead, he closed her hand around the device and quietly said that honesty had to be offered before discovery, not after it. The words struck harder than anger. She had expected interrogation, but received something more painful: a chance to confess without hiding behind royal staff. The messages revealed through a documented review that Harrow repeatedly warned Camilla about a supposed plan by William's advisors to dismantle her household. No evidence supported that warning. Harrow created the forged instruction himself and sent it to Marianne, believing his proposal would frighten the Queen into protecting him once he entered the palace. Camilla never authorized the visit, but her fear had opened the door he used. Camilla signed a formal statement ending every channel of contact with Harrow and accepting independent oversight, meaning another office would verify her household's security permissions. Charles agreed that she would not be publicly blamed for an instruction she never gave. Trust had not been fully restored, but truth had finally replaced suspicion. Together, they prepared to address William and the senior household with one account and one decision. Their marriage had survived the private reckoning, but the crown still had to explain why its most confidential meeting vanished from the royal calendar. By the following morning, the palace's silence had become a story of its own. The councillors' cars had departed early. The council chamber remained unused, and a scheduled notice never appeared in the court circular. The public did not know what had happened inside the corridor, but it could see that something had gone wrong. Then one newspaper published a front page, dominated by an empty gilded chair beneath 4 words, "The meeting that vanished." Broadcasters quickly reconstructed the unusual sequence. Privy councillors had arrived at Buckingham Palace, remained for less than an hour, and departed without completing the expected constitutional business. The court circular, the official daily record of royal duties and engagements, contained no explanation. That absence mattered, because council decisions normally appeared with calm regularity. A vanished meeting suggested that something powerful enough to interrupt the monarchy had happened behind closed doors. Charles approved a concise palace statement, confirming that he postponed the meeting after an unauthorized former staff member entered a restricted area. The wording protected confidential council discussions while admitting the breach. Yet William warned that too much secrecy would allow wild speculation to replace the truth. The prince supported revealing what happened, but he refused to expose the meeting's private agenda merely to satisfy public curiosity. Camilla read the statement twice. She understood that her old association with Edmund Harrow would shape every headline, even though a documented technical report proved the voice message was forged. When she asked Charles whether he regretted defending her, the king answered without hesitation. He regretted the secrecy that had allowed Harrow to manipulate her fear, but he would not blame his wife for an instruction she never gave. Outside Buckingham Palace, a small crowd gathered near the Victoria Memorial as television crews reported live. One woman raised the newspaper showing the empty gilded chair, while the palace gates remained firmly closed behind her. That single image captured the public mood: fascination, concern, and the uneasy belief that royal control had briefly disappeared. A national broadcaster described the cancellation as a rare moment when domestic trust collided with constitutional security. The phrase spread quickly, because it explained the crisis without revealing protected state business. The drama involved a marriage, but its consequences reached the crown. Charles had not cancelled a family lunch. He had stopped an official meeting because confidence in palace access had collapsed. The palace later confirmed, through its written statement, that Harrow's lifetime ban remained permanent. It also announced Marianne Voss's resignation after she accepted responsibility for failing to verify the false instruction. Marianne's departure came alongside a centralized approval system, meaning one security office would now confirm every future royal visitor rather than relying on separate household permissions. Charles watched the coverage with William. When Camilla's photograph appeared beside Harrow's, the monarch reached for the remote but stopped. The full statement remained on screen, including the finding that she had not authorized the visit. Hiding that conclusion would protect no one. With the public account settled, Charles reconvened the Privy Council under new security arrangements. The world had seen the disruption. The final verdict would come when he reopened the chamber and decided what the crown would remember. 7 days after the corridor confrontation, the Privy Council chamber opened again. The same polished table waited beneath the chandeliers, but the mood had changed. Every badge had been reissued, every entrance had been checked, and every councillor understood why the first meeting had failed. Charles entered without hesitation. Camilla did not accompany him, and Edmund Harrow would never cross those palace gates again. The king took his seat and restored the authority that secrecy had nearly fractured. Charles had placed the postponed business under centralized security control. Every future visitor would now require confirmation from both the relevant royal household and the king's security office. The change mattered because no private secretary or trusted aide could again use one person's authority to bypass another office. The system no longer depended on familiar names. It depended on direct verification. Marianne Voss left royal employment after accepting responsibility for approving Harrow without confirming the false message. Her departure remained private but decisive. Marianne had not created the deception, yet her failure had carried a forbidden man to the edge of constitutional business. Charles refused to treat that failure as harmless. Before the session began, the monarch looked toward the corridor where he had first seen Harrow. He closed his briefing folder, nodded to the clerk of the council, the official responsible for recording the meeting's formal proceedings, and said, "We will proceed." Those words ended the disruption. They also confirmed that royal authority had returned through discipline, not denial. Charles emerged stronger, but deeply sobered. He had protected the institution by stopping the original meeting, yet he understood that command without honest communication could allow fear and private influence to grow. Camilla remained beside him, but Harrow's network was dismantled, and her household accepted stricter oversight. She now understood that personal loyalty could never operate beyond royal accountability. William watched his father choose both constitutional discipline and measured fairness. The prince saw Charles acknowledge Camilla's secret contact without punishing her for the forged instructions she never sent. That balance mattered. The crown could demand responsibility without turning justice into revenge. Harrow finally admitted during a documented security interview that he fabricated the voice message to regain access and force his staffing proposal before Camilla. His permanent ban remained in place, and the case was closed within the royal household. The copied papers contained no hidden constitutional order and no genuine emergency. They were tools of pressure, created by a dismissed aide desperate to recover influence. Canceling the meeting had never been an act of panic. Charles had drawn a firm boundary between family loyalty and responsibility to the crown. The interruption embarrassed the palace for one morning, but continuing without answers could have damaged the monarchy for years. That evening, Charles and Camilla walked through the same corridor together. Neither mentioned Harrow. When they reached the council chamber, the king closed its door, and she continued beside him, not untouched by the crisis, but no longer separated from him by secrecy. The corridor had exposed a painful breach, but its final legacy was unmistakable. Royal trust would now be protected by truth, accountability, and the courage to stop everything when something was wrong. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.